Good morning, Chandra.
Good morning, Laura. Woo, woo, woo.
I'm so excited to meet you. I've heard so much about you over the time I've known Berardino and Federico, and then our intersections just didn't happen. And so I've been very excited to have you on the podcast today.
Well, likewise, I have heard incredible things about Miss Laura Adele from my team as well. I'm so sorry I didn't get to meet you in person. So I'm like, next best thing. But yeah, next time you come to Chicago, we got to go out.
We do. We will be back there in May for the big summit. I'm coming with Dina, and so we will have to make that a plan. I took her to oh, come on, Laura, don't forget the name of it, Sparrow, to have grasshoppers. Have you ever been to the bar Sparrow?
I have not, it's funnily enough, but I almost went and then that got canceled. So I didn't actually get to go. So it's still on my list.
All right, well, we're going to
awesome.
go because it is the coolest, darkest speakeasy feel. And their grasshoppers, as I now know, with the amount of ingredients that go in, not every bar does them. And these are delightful. It's like eating an Andy's candy. So yes, we'll make it a plan.
Fantastic. I can't wait to see you and Dina out.
Yes, so I'm going to do a quick countdown and then we're going to launch right into the show intro, and then I will intro you, and then we'll just have our dialogue. I just really want you to feel comfortable. I'm not very I like to just see where the dialogue goes because we're talking about career stuff, and so it tends to take a very interesting path usually with my guests. If anything you're like, oh, I don't like that, just stop and we'll cut it out in post. So just let me know.
Got it. I know you guys at Microsoft, you always make us look good, sound good. So I'm all about free flow. My biggest worry is you're just going to have to cut me off. I'm a talker. So.
Oh, and so am I. That's why it's funny when Gretchen and I did our podcast, we were talking last night. I'm like, I feel like I'm in my sorority with her. Like we can't shut each other up. So I'm glad to know you're part of our crew of.
I'm in the You Gretchen crew.
Yes, no, just the talker, high energy. So, all right. So, Mackie, thank you again for everything. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to do the countdown now. So,
would you like me to hop off or just go off camera?
If it's up to you, I'm okay with you staying, All
right, I'll just turn my camera off. You both look and sound great.
All right, awesome. All right, so 3, 2. Welcome to the Annielytics Eye for an AI podcast. I am your host, Laura Adele. I am the Chief Data Scientist here at Microsoft, working on really cool projects around sustainability and some advanced manufacturing use cases. And today I am so excited to introduce you to Chandra Brown, who is the CEO of MxD. MxD, I'll give you my 2 cents about it, is one of the coolest businesses because it is taking manufacturing technology to a whole new level. And they're the ones who are basically enabling it for everyone in the States. And so I will hand it over to Chandra to explain to us a little bit about MxD and what she does for MxD today. Chandra.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laura. It is awesome to be here. I've been so excited about doing this podcast because I could talk about manufacturing all day long. I am incredibly proud, as you said, to be the CEO at MxD. What I love about it is it's a public-private partnership. It's a nonprofit. So we bring together the best and the brightest from academics, from the industry, whether it's the tiniest companies and startups and small businesses, all the way to the huge multinationals like the Microsofts and the Boeings, of the world. And so when you bring all these great minds together, along with the US government, the US Department of Defense, FDA. So we bring these 3 groups together: government, industry, academia, community partnerships, and we're all coming together to try to solve problems, right, that are too big for any one company to solve. Right. And that's what I'm passionate about, and specifically in the advanced manufacturing space. So whether it's AI, right, whether it's blockchain, whether it's augmented reality, whether it's even using World War II equipment, right? And how do you digitize that? And how do you get the data out of it to make this world a better place? So everything from kind of the big to the little. And I would also say we're also the National Center for Cybersecurity and Manufacturing. So I know you know this better when we talk about data, but then we got to educate people on how they're protecting all this huge amounts of data that are out there. So I love my job. I get to work with diverse people every day, all to advance manufacturing in the United States. And it's a great job.
You know, your background and reminding me of just the cybersecurity walkthrough I did. So what you guys see in the background here is the shop floor innovation space of MxD. So for somebody that's a tinkerer like me, to go in and to be able to touch buttons, and I know I'm simplifying this. I mean, trust me, I'm a data scientist, but to be able to have the tactile feel of engaging with, here's how a process system runs. Here are the QA and the checks and balances and quality things that happen, so that as a layman or somebody who's coming in there for the first time, I can see a process end to end. It was a visceral experience that I loved. Tell me a bit about how you guys came up with this shop floor idea and what it's done for you since you've launched it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I'm a manufacturer at heart. That's what I've done before. Metal manufacturing. I built boats and bridges and
I saw that in your bio. That was really cool, actually. We have to touch on that, definitely.
Well, and so manufacture just exactly as you said, Laura, you embodied it. People walk in, and especially manufacturing, we like to touch it, feel it, right? Walk on it, push the buttons. And here I am running this digital manufacturing institute, right? And so we had to find a way to make digital come alive.
Yeah.
Like what we show on our floor behind me is really the art of the possible. Like I said, we have World War II old machinery, and then we have cutting edge, right? The latest and greatest 5G, on our floor that you can test with, a whole cyber wall. So I don't want these small businesses to have to be hacked. We'll hack us, and we'll show you like the problems that come with it, right? So I really think that's the importance of this space and the bringing all of our partners together to really show a story, the story of a digital thread and how it works, that you can walk through this floor. And I hope ideas spark and things come alive for you, when you do it.
Well, firstly, I think, since the first time I was there, I came back and raised all sorts of, we have so many cool opportunities, Microsoft, that we need to jump into. I was so excited. And a funny side story. So your vice president gave me a token that gets printed. It's this metal token. I was at an Airbnb over the holidays, and they had an air hockey table. And I'm like, great. Well, there was no puck. And I'm like, I have the token. And so the token that I got on the shop floor saved the day, and it actually worked very, very well. So side note, the tokens that you provide in the walkthrough can also act as an air hockey puck.
Hey, Laura, can I add one funny thing to that story? Someone else came and told me recently, oh, I loved that token, which we're demonstrating. You can track all this data on this one little piece that we make, behind me on the floor. They're using it as a shot glass holder, like a little coaster for shot glasses. I was like, wow, okay, that's creative. Again, this is what's great about this.
No, that is amazing. I loved it. I remember I was asking Bergina, I was like, I really wanted to pocket it, but then I'm like, no, we're a partner. I'm not going to steal stuff here. So I'm like, Bergina, can I keep this? I thought maybe it was just, and he was like, of course you can. I actually am so proud of that, because it enables me as a data scientist to tell stories to people in a very, and it may not, in a virtual environment, you're like, well, how do you do that? And so I told the story of my experience there, of where you could be a very small manufacturer, an additive manufacturer, somebody getting into the business and feel overwhelmed by it. Well, large pieces of equipment, and I can't afford that. The reality is, like you said, with World War II equipment all the way to the modern, that's what I learned that day, is that you don't have to have multi-million, billion-dollar pieces of equipment to have a smart, intelligent, secure shop floor. Is this part of the vision that you've learned over your career in starting with boats? I mean, tell me a bit about how you landed in manufacturing, because frankly, you're a bit of a unicorn when I learned about you. And it was what made me so drawn to you, is like, this is a woman CEO who I love listening to, who is engaging. How did she get into manufacturing? So tell me a bit about the start of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'll be a good example on how, let me be very clear, Laura, I did not start out, I am going to be a manufacturing CEO. That never crossed my mind. So the fact that I'm here today is shocking.
No, and that's going to be really important to my listeners, because I'm sure they're thinking like, well, I'm never going to be a CEO. And so I think that's going to be a beautiful story, if you wouldn't mind sharing it with us.
Absolutely. Like I initially, I think, wanted to be a librarian, right?
No.
And I have a couple, like, this is not funny.
No, I love libraries. I have, I was just going through microfiche the other day trying to explain to my son what microfiche was. And it was like, I couldn't find the way to show him how this was my only tool. He's like, just go to the Google, Mom. Yeah.
It's so true. I love books so much. I always thought I thought you got to just read all day long surrounded by books. Obviously, that's not quite what librarians do, but I started out, again, great story, really. I was in Chicago. I was born on the south side of Chicago, but I've moved around. I love diversity. I moved actually to the West Coast. I got it in my 20s. I got my MBA. I think I'm going to be in business, probably international business. And I love international travel. I pack up a U-Haul. I moved to Portland, Oregon. This is way back when it was like really cool to do,
You on your own. So you packed up on your own and just went out west.
Yep. Yeah. Wow. I knew one person
okay.
in the city of
Very
Portland.
Brave. Okay.
But I fell in love with it because I also love nature, mountains, where it was so different from the Midwest, right? Yeah. So I wanted change. Let's embrace change. And I had like no contacts, no job contacts in my early 20s. And I basically started looking around, and I started temping as I was trying to figure out my big job, like maybe with a Nike, right? Or someone like out in the West Coast, no connections. And basically, make a very long story short, I started out as a temp and I worked my way up to CEO. So this can be done for people. And I didn't know at the time how much I loved manufacturing. I hadn't had as much exposure. Same with most like women and other minority groups. They don't know, they don't see it, right? They don't do it.
So how did you get exposed to it? What was the first job? Was it the temp job that was in a manufacturing? Okay.
Well, I should say no, actually, because again, I think this is an important point. Thank you for asking that question. That was the first time I was really hands-on. Like I wanted to learn how to weld, and I thought that's what I was doing, do all this other cool stuff. But actually, to be fair, I was first exposed to it through my family on the South Side. My grandfather, who's still alive at 99 in the South Side of Chicago, amazing man.
Amazing. Oh my gosh.
His 95th birthday present, you'll love this, was like a riding lawnmower because he was tired of the push mower. Like, so it's just.
Well, by this point in life, I think that was maybe a good gift he can have. You've earned it. Like, that's amazing.
So it does tell you a little bit about our background. Like I love, like, so I was taught that the trades are respected. My grandfather went to World War II, obviously, and served, but he worked, in the Chicago steel companies in the area. And so I was always taught that that's not a bad thing. Like I know a lot of people, want their children to get, degrees and become doctors and lawyers. And, from an early age, I knew that working with your hands was a good thing too. I mean, I respect, I consider woodworkers and welders, they're artists, they're craftspeople. Like what they do is amazing. And I think we need to take some time to recognize like how great that is. And that the other big thing, Laura, why I love what I do is because that's the path to the middle class. Like my family didn't grow up wealthy on the South Side of Chicago. My dad went to college on the GI Bill after Vietnam. So, the reality is, I think we have to look at, that's one of the things I love about manufacturing. You can have an incredible, career, raise a family. Even now, it's still like,
and do it like AI. So, I mean, people maybe think, oh, it's manufacturing. Well, I don't get to now do cool technology. Well, that is another myth I think is out there. And that's what MxD, that's what you do. And so if you had to like take your experience and look back at it and say, okay, so first I heard bravery when I heard you just picked up and moved. I did that from Miami to Seattle. I knew nobody that was my first, my first career out of college, and it was terrifying. But in that time path, I worked at Apple, I worked at Expedia. I had a lot of struggles. It was not a smooth sailing trip to get to where I am today. Did you have a lot of people coming, you can't do manufacturing, this is a mindset that I've dealt in tech a ton, that they would meet me and I'd have I call it the Elle Wood syndrome. Like I have pink fluffy pens. They're like, you can't be a data scientist. Like they couldn't put that into their brain that somebody could like fluffy pink glittery things and also be a rock star at math. Did you have any of that in your career path early on, really breaking down those walls and letting them know, see me as Chandra, see my brain, don't see just because of my gender?
Oh yeah. I don't know how anyone doesn't have some of that. Unfortunately, again, we're still working on that. Right. Right. Oh no, definitely. And I tell this to people all the time, like giving kind of credits to let's say, privileged older white men.
Right.
I don't know if that was diplomatic enough or not, but let's just be able to call a spade a spade.
Thank you. I'm a very direct person, so I don't know either. I think that sounds just fine.
But the reality is I was the only woman, in the manufacturing space. And this was Oregon Iron Works. And then we became, a subset. We kicked out United Streetcar, building American-made streetcars, right? And so, heavy metal, bridges, boats, like this is not a, union shop. Like there just wasn't a lot of women in the manufacturing space. And I give a lot of credit to the men that I worked with and the male leadership. There was no women leadership. There was no mentor. There was no, they saw something in me and they were my allies, if you will. And I tell this to people all the time, in these male dominated areas, there often aren't. They say, look to the women. There may be no women. And then you have to find the male allies that are not going to hold me back, that are going to recognize talent and uplift it. And they promoted me. Think about it from the top, like promoted. I mean, I did the work, but the reality is they were the ones that ultimately, let me rise and saw something in me. And that's how I got where I am. So I always give credit,
really powerful point that I don't think in all of the interviews that we've done that we've actually touched on, in that, yes, we're in these male dominated industries, but what that actually means is that a male had to then take you and see something in you to that. And that's a pretty profound point, that those allies do exist. What would you say is the thing that somebody should look for if they are, experiencing that in their career? What are those qualities in a male ally that they should seek out for that mentorship, leadership, to work with?
Yeah, well, I think the first step always, what they need to seek is how, kind of how creative are they? How that entrepreneur spirit, that we like to talk about, like, are they able to think outside the box? And honestly, manufacturing as a whole is a little bit more conservative from that standpoint. It's not seen as, even though it is, as very cutting edge and incredible things, to your point, are being done. But the reality is you have to find someone who is willing to embrace change, who, I would be asking, like, do they even realize they're in a revolution right now? We talk about industry 4.0, like, does this leadership, can they see that? So, I look to people that are, open-minded. Do they have other people surrounding them? Like, we talk about the importance of diversity around you. Look to the people in your organization that have diversity around them and on their teams, and prioritize it. That's the starting place, right? Where I would go to find, like, and look at some of these allies and talk to them and see, hey, will you help sponsor me? Hey, will you help mentor me, and move forward? That's what
How did you ask them? Like, what was the, a lot of people will say, I can't ask them. And I'll be like, why? People are people. At the time I was being mentored by who is now the CEO of Zillow, Rich Barton, while I was at Expedia, and he was the CEO there. And we just happened to sit near each other, and it just happened to turn out the way it did, that he became who he was. So I was very blessed to have that. But I remember in the beginning, he was still the CEO of Expedia. So for me, being as young as I was, I just said, hey, would you mind if I'll do my homework? I remember being so nervous, like, I'll do my homework and I'll never waste your time, but would you mind if maybe once or twice a year, I sat down with you and ran through some career planning and sort of showed you my progress and got some cues on where I should go. And, I remember rambling all this, and he was looking at me like, wow, stop. You had me at like the first word. Yes, I will. And so I always tell people, just ask. The worst thing they can say is no. And that's hard, but what would you say, if they have to go up and ask somebody to be their sponsor, would you agree that they should just come out and ask, or is there a process that you went through and you're learning that you could recommend?
No, I wish there was, a magic process, because I love process, as you know. Exactly.
It's a token that you can play air hockey with, but that also is the magic process. Unfortunately, not there yet.
No, we're not there. I would echo your advice. It's the same. Like, you have to ask. I mean, and the other advice I give people is, it's all about empathy. Like, try to put yourself in their shoes, right? So if you really want a busy CEO to be your mentor, and again, I mentor lots of people right now, a lot of women I'm currently mentoring, because that's part of what we need to do to give back, right? But, they put yourself in their shoes, like, be ready to go. What's your ask? Like, what do you want to get from them? How can they help you? Like you did, make it easy on them, but you must ask, like and I'm flattered. I'm flattered every time someone asks me to be a mentor. I'm flattered. It doesn't mean I can do them all. And when I say no, ask. The other thing I would say, make sure you ask that person, because again, I put myself in their shoes, who else could it be? Like if I'm already mentoring 10 people, I can't take on any more, right? But that doesn't mean I don't want to help you. So maybe there's someone else, and look at
That's
other
a great
people in
suggestion.
your company, in your role, that you could say, well, now that I know your interest, maybe you should try X, Y, or Z person, or say, I recommended you talk to so-and-so, which is another help, because always good if someone can recommend you a lead in to a person.
No, that's a great point. You know, I actually am going to start doing that, because I too I feel terrible when I have to say no, but I've realized that in my time, I can't do even what I want to do with those I am mentoring if I continue just to say yes, because I want to help all these different sort of unique cases. But having a recommendation certainly is a great, way to say, I'm not just saying no, because that's what a lot of people that listen to this will say is like, well, they'll just say no, they talk themselves out of it. But if you can then say, but I have this great recommendation that I think will work well with you, and I've already given that, that call in, if you will, I think that's actually a really good piece of advice. I love learning. This is why I love this podcast, because I'm learning from you on how you do stuff, period. So hearing that you mentor, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Because I thought maybe by the time you get to a certain level, even myself, that you don't have time. You're a CEO. And to that vein, let me ask you, just real quick, what do you do? Like, what is your morning process? I know a bunch of people ahead of time when I did a poll said, like, how does she get ready in the morning? I'm like, probably the same way you do, but I'll ask, so do you have any special process that gets you revved for the day and, to make sure that you're ready to roll as a CEO for your day?
That's so funny, because I think I probably won't give the same answer to most people. I don't have so much of a process, I have to be honest, but I'm one of those rare cases, like I roll out ready to go. And to me, the most precious thing, it's like kind of the dichotomy here, I love sleep. Like everybody knows, like I think sleep is probably the most underrated thing. And, for those of us that are busy, and I'm a night person, I stay up really late, I'm thinking, I have to turn my brain off. So I have a lot of turn off processes, less about the getting up processes, actually more about the turning off. So when I get up, I'm like very much ready, but I will sleep as long as I can. Like I really prefer not to have something have to wake me up, that if we could wake up naturally, that's such a wonderful thing, that if you get enough sleep that you can do that, right? So I'm very much about sleep as much. So that means my routine is very tight. So when I go, only because I'm sleeping, like I'm not one of those people, like I know a lot of my friends, they get up like 2 hours early, they have their coffee, they read the paper. I am not that person. I am rolling out. I can put this makeup on in 3 minutes flat. I am out the door.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm the same way. I'm a night person. I do most of my coding around algorithms at night. It's when I get the sort of clearest mindset, because I'm not being pinged by emails and stuff all day long. But the mornings are like my sort of precious time to not bug me unless I need to be. Like I don't want, people used to put meetings on at 6 a.m. and I'm like, unless this is Satya coming down saying we need to have this, like, no, so how do you set your own boundaries to make sure people know this is my times of availability?
Yeah, this is something I think everybody struggles with. And again, I want to be clear, I share my struggles too, time management and how we do it. It's tough. I really like to lead by example for my team and for others. That's one of my philosophies. And so that means like on my calendar, I'll use an example. We're super great at MxD. Obviously the team, your people are the most important things. We have complete hybrid, kind of complete flexibility. And so for things like I take vacations, I believe travel is super important. I love international travel in particular, whether it's going on a safari, whether it's meeting different cultures, it's important to me. So on my calendar, people will see, blocks of time, like I'm going on vacation at this time, and of course, if there's an emergency, as you said, something happens, you could be disturbed, but they know that. And I think it leads them like it's okay. We're now piloting a 4-day work week at MxD. And so I wanted to be part of the pilot. So I'm working Monday through Thursday. You're going to love this. So I think how hard this is. So like on Friday, I'm not in the office. I'm not supposed to be working. And again, I am practicing this. I'm not perfect yet, but I am trying to be like, no, I'm not going to do that on Friday. No, I'm not going to do that big interview that day. No, and so that gives other people, we as leaders have to give them the space, right? To be able to know that that's okay. And that's not only okay, it's acceptable and it's, being shown. So that's where like, so Fridays, I've tried to really protect that space, let's say, and then, you just work your 20 hours the rest of the other 4 days, right? So that's what I'm saying. I'm not good necessarily.
No, but you're modeling a behavior. And I think that's so critical, because I think a lot of the generation that's coming into the workplace right now, they're of a mindset where they speak their mind. And I love that. And they have very strong beliefs, and they fight for them in ways in which I didn't feel as comfortable to do when I was first starting out in my career. And so one of the things that my team will say to me is, I love that you mirror the behaviors you expect from us. So you're not just saying, hey, we have 5 health days. I'm actually taking my mental health days too that Microsoft gave us, so that they feel the room, that, because otherwise you're right. People are like, oh, I can't take the time. I'm new on the team. There's a host of things that you tell yourself. So I love that was how you launched into that, is that you model the behavior first and foremost, that you're not perfect, but yeah.
Exactly. And I'll tell you one other great, just like little technique that I've been doing and learning, because I have such an incredibly high productive team. And, we're smaller. So, I mean, I've, roughly 50 people at MxD. And again, we're very
really,
much
that's it? You guys operate like you have like a huge, oh my gosh, that's even more remarkable, knowing the stuff that you guys are doing. Wow.
It's incredible. Well, we have tons of wonderful partners like yourself and others. There's lots of other people, in our ecosystem, right? That I love. And so
have amazing employees. I mean,
I
know you probably think we say it to everybody, but I mean, I truly, and Berardino knows this. That's their VP, by the way. I love working with you guys because you have a group of employees that are leaning in ways that you don't often see on such a large scale. And maybe it's because it's 50. So they all know to work with each other and rely on each other in a beautiful, trusting way. And that's why I enjoy MxD so much.
Yeah, it's so my team, again, I know we all say that same thing, but yeah, I've run a lot of businesses, right? Like been a lot of it. This is like the best, I've worked with. And again, talk about modeling, even your own, my board of a manufacturing institute, right? Majority women. And that, Jackie Wright obviously is on my board. She's fantastic. And a lot of emphasis on, minority and diversity. My senior leadership team, majority female. Like I wanted to prove to people that manufacturing may be male dominated, and it is still, but I'm going to, again, model the behavior I want to see, which is that we need this diverse workforce, especially with what we're doing on this kind of cutting edge area.
No, it's amazing. I mean, I had a 14-year-old girl on the show that came to me through LinkedIn to tell me a story of a really sad story, actually, that her best friend had committed suicide, and she was wanting to build a model so that she could pick up if bullying was happening, because that's what had happened to her friend. And her friend had posted a note on Twitter right before, and nobody caught it. So she was like, I'm going to be the change. Can you help me learn data science enough so I can write this model? And I was like, of course, I will find time. And this woman to be inspires me immensely. She not only took the feedback and lessons, but she went to Facebook and Twitter to fight. Why aren't you doing more? She's Canadian. She went to her Canadian school system and said, can I create a program where if people are in need or help, they can call anonymously and get help at the student level? I mean, talk about being the change. And so when I see her at 14, and then I hear how you're setting up and making sure you're not just saying you have diversity and wanting to, but you're showing your leadership chain is diverse. I see this beautiful blend of worlds coming together that gives, I literally have goosebumps. It's inspiring to me to know that there are CEOs like you who really walk the walk. And I too am blessed having Jackie in my chain. I mean, I look at my president as a female, my skip, Jackie, my boss, all are women. And that in my career has never happened. And so to hear that you guys in manufacturing have set it up that way, that is a beautiful testament to you walking that walk, Chandra. It really is.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very proud of it. That's another thing I tell people, like, again, these are like minor little advice I give to some of your listeners is, if you go to the MxDusa.org website, we put photos up too, because, it's not just about the name of the thing. I want them to see, because, again, we always talk about, especially for women, sometimes you need to see it to be it, right? Like, go look at the photos of the team, the photos of the board, right? Like, I also want to show, people even that way, like on a website, like so simple, right? But I think that's another critical thing. And I've been spending a lot of my time working on getting more women on boards and, private boards and other things. Because again, as a CEO, so that's an area that hopefully I can influence on like people to look at.
Oh.
Look at the boards, because, you know, look where it comes from the top, you know, mingling all throughout the organizations, especially on these smaller, you know, kind of the medium size too, and some of the smaller. That one of my roles is like, if I get on a board, I want to hopefully replace myself with at least 2 to 3 others. Like that's one of the goals when we go on there, if I'm the only woman on a board, for example. So I think those are other areas we can be helpful in.
How do you, so what, for listeners who are like, what's a board? What is this thing now? I want it, that it's funny. People will hear something that's mentioned and then be like, okay, how do I now plan to get that in my career? So what exactly are these boards that you're mentioning? And if people are wanting to have, maybe even people farther in their careers are like, yes, I've been wanting to get on a board seat. Do you have any recommendation for both? What is the board? And then how others can maybe get on board seats if they're interested?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I'm working on. So again, like I'm a work in progress, and I will tell you that's a little bit how hard it is to get on a board, like a paid board, I should say. So one, what are boards? The board of directors on most companies are kind of what are setting, you know, your company culture, the overall direction. They have, you know, whether it's the finance, whether it's your sustainability and growth, you know, all that. The board is kind of your thought leaders for where the direction, the strategic direction of an organization. So we should start there to kind of define what they do. Okay. And so that trickles down, you know, the CEO normally reports to the board or senior leadership, right? And then that goes throughout the whole, however big or small you are, that will be filtered down, right? So there are what I recommend to women in particular, because it's hard. The majority of boards are male, huge percentage. And what's funny is I love data, right? You're going to love this as the data side. If you go look, there's been some studies done recently that looked at Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, and the ones with the more diverse boards, it's not just about women here, of course, it's diversity across the underrepresented groups. The ones that were more diverse actually had a better ROI, like better returns. Like, so it's where your money is, like, and, you know, women are the greatest consumers. We are the purchasers globally. So again, like, and this is not about like, don't even do it because it's like the right thing to do, which it is. Right. You can do it because it actually, the companies perform better. So look at the data.
At the end of the day, like, okay, it comes down to dollars and cents now. And now that's, you know, yes, it's the right thing to do, that we know. But now you've like, I didn't know that the ROI is higher and greater for those companies. It makes sense to me. I always like to say that, you know, my life partner, he cannot, if he's on one track, he stays on that track until he finishes, then we go to the next. I am not that. I hear him here, I'm working here, I know that something else is going on here, and I'm planning like the email that I'm typing, and I can do it all. I'm a multitasker that way. And so I think that's one of the reasons why women contribute so greatly to leadership roles, is their ability to just, you know, and I don't know, you know, I don't know if it's a gender thing. I don't know if it's a me thing, but I just know that it has lended me well to being able to manage teams, to being able to see and grow and do other things. Would you say that, you know, what if you had to boil down, you know, one of your greatest traits that you believe intrinsically about yourself, whether you learn from a Myers-Briggs personality test or your love language, what would you say is the one thing about Chandra that really is your motivating drive, your thing that makes you successful, if you had to distill it down?
Wow. Okay, that's a hard question, Laura.
I love throwing out the hard ones.
Oh my Lord.
I can tell you from my third party, having just met you, having heard so much about you, that, you know, outside looking in, your energy is infectious. Like, I'm not even in a room with you, but I feel like if I was, that you are that personality that people gravitate towards. Like, there's a light around you that you want to talk to them. It's just that there's an energy that you feel. From an outside in, I would think that would be a superpower that you probably know you have, but it's pretty infectious. And it's making this conversation enjoyable for me because of it.
Yeah, I would definitely, I mean, if I had to pick, I guess, yeah, it's so hard to, you know, self-analyze, but passion, you know, and I think a realism around the passion is really some of my strengths. Like, I am passionate, but it's always grounded, right? Like, I think, you know, grounded passion, exactly. Not passion, you know, even just for the sake of passion, like passion for kind of what is the greater good. And I love like inspiring. Like I said, there's nothing that, you know, makes me happier, me more charged than, you know, sharing kind of the vision and bringing more people along with you. I think it's why I love international travel so much, and exposure to different things that, you know, not just curiosity, but the perspective on how we are working together, in this greater world and this planet that we need to take care of. So it's just, it's so interesting. I appreciate it. I would probably say, passion, but a grounded passion,
I love
is
that.
my super strength.
Passion run amok is not great in a workplace because you can really drive people crazy if you have this idea and that idea and that, and the passion's beautiful, but you have to be able to ground it in a way that drives it forward, because otherwise you're not moving the needle, you're not helping the greater good. So tell me a trip that you went on recently, or one of your favorite trips. You've mentioned this a few times. I love international travel too. So I'm curious, tell me a place you've gone to that where you found the people, the culture so surprisingly rewarding that you weren't expecting when you got there.
Absolutely. It's funny because I'm doing like a fundraiser right now for an anti-poaching initiative in Kenya, in Africa. And I would say, I've been to, I don't know how many countries, well over 40 or something. I've been a lot of places. When I used to work for President Obama, I traveled the world as the deputy.
By the way,
listeners,
she worked for President Obama. I meant to say that in the intro, like that. I didn't want to drop that as the initial one, but yes, she worked in the, which is
no. But it was just the job. I was traveling to different countries promoting U.S. manufacturing and working on trade issues. So I traveled all over the world, right? Like lots of different countries, lots of different opportunities. But where I've gone back to multiple times, I love animals, a huge thing on safari. And I believe, the endangerment and the loss of plant and animal life that are going extinct is one of the world's greatest travesties, because it does affect every person, here. So it's just, this is top of mind for me. It's funny.
No, I would love to have your information about this because I'm hearing it. So Malawi is one of my favorite places. And I'm a big fan of just all over Africa for almost the same reason. So hearing that this is something that you're working on, please send me the information, because it's such a beautiful thing when you go to a place and you are, welcome into a culture and community that has by vision so much less than you as what I thought. And what I learned is they had so much more, because all the noise of materialism and that it wasn't there. There was just this beauty of innovation and culture and how they were moving their own society along for the betterment of the Malawian people. That, some people be like, oh, because they have no little. I'm like, no, you can say that, but everybody has what they have, and it's how you utilize it. It's grounded passion. It's those things that come together that make communities, companies, people whole and better. And that to me was what was so beautiful. So hearing that you have a passion play for, this beautiful.
But it's funny, the other thing I loved about it, like, exactly as you said, going out in these, tents and, you're on safari and you're in the middle of nowhere. There's no roads, like the rangers are just roaming around, finding the lions and giraffes. And so and I was in, my favorite one was in the Maasai with the Maasai in Kenya. I've done safaris all over Africa and they're all great in their own way, but I really appreciated Kenya, because I was with Maasai guides. So locals, they have spears, they have very wonderful. And their community was just so amazing. And what I liked when I first got off the plane, even on my first trip to Africa, and I felt this way too in Asia, but it was more moving to me, again, being in a probably less materialistic, as you said, all those things. But the minority, like a blonde woman, I've had this happen a lot of places now. When you go overseas, it's when I truly can be even a double minority. You stand out. I'm in a crowd and people want to take their picture with you, or they're like,
really?
Wow, like when you go really remote, they don't see you. And they think everyone, it's funny, they think everyone like is in the movies and stuff. Like, it's so funny, the perception. And it gives me perception, how I can look back on how the US is perceived. How are we perceived? In a very different, so it was uncomfortable a little bit, but also good for me. Like, we need to put ourselves, if I want to develop empathy, I'm trying to develop and work in progress, right? That's one of the ways you can do it. So, and then finally for me, it was the honestly death and animals killing other animals, like the circle of life. Like so many people are not, I know people on farms and other things are exposed to this, but so many people, including, I was born in Chicago, right?
Right.
So when I go out, there to rural and you see, and we think, oh, it's so sad that little baby got eaten, and you're like, well, the lion needs to live too, even though that little baby zebra is adorable, right?
Exactly.
So it's just, that reminds me again, that's that realism, right? The grounded side of the passion is that this is what's behind it. It isn't all just, oh, it's beautiful, photograph animals. There's blood, there's smells, there's flies,
There's
so
a lot of other things.
I embrace that.
No, I love that because it's an interesting, the circle of life is one of those things that I traveled with somebody who was they were a vegan and they had this reaction. I'm like, well, what were you expecting when we came on here? And maybe I didn't do a great job setting expectations. And so, but it's what gave me empathy even to her needs and challenges as we were there. But I think it's neat, Chandra, that you have embraced, your career and your opportunities and taken risks. And, I think, just as we close out here and thinking through, you've worked for governments, you've helped, influence presidents, you are now driving the future of manufacturing. What is the one piece of advice you could give yourself, starting out that now? What would you tell your younger self that, you could tell the younger listeners now listening, but what would you tell young Chandra Brown as she's starting her career, maybe to do something different or something you've learned along the way that you'd like to know earlier? For me, it was to speak up. Don't be shy, So is there anything that you've learned in your career that you'd love to have told yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably one of the more important things, I wish I had told myself is not just to take more risks, but to be more open to opportunities as they come. So to be a little bit more embracing of what comes your way. So, I think we're both, fairly smart. Like I said, I'm grounded, I'm realist, I can multitask and do lots of things, but I usually have a plan, I have a path, and I would have never been here with you today if I hadn't, packed up and moved across the country, took a temp job at manufacturing. Like this would not have happened most likely, it wasn't my targeted plan. So like the analogy of when windows open, I'm not saying every time you have to jump out that window, but you better be looking out the window, open that window, look, explore it. So again, very concrete example, when people get job offers and stuff, even if you don't want the job, I always say, go interview, it's good practice for one. And like, you'll learn a lot of things. It doesn't mean you want to do it. It doesn't, but it's good for, you to see what else is out there, travel, do these things like so.
Absolutely.
And I wish I traveled a lot, but I wish I would have, again, traveled maybe even earlier or, exposed myself in more uncomfortable situations earlier, kind of to your point, which will teach you how to speak up and how to, more comfortable doing that. So I always tell people everything is an opportunity. The person you're next to in a restaurant, the one person at the grocery store, whatever you're doing, always be looking to and how you can help others will really help you help yourself.
That's really actually quite beautiful. Risk taking is one of those things that, you don't always feel comfortable doing. And so do you ever, I guess I said that was my last question and I lied, real last question. Do you ever feel imposter syndrome? And then I know we have to go. Now, are you at a place where you're like, nope, I got this. I know my game. Or do you ever still walk in a room and have that moment of that self-doubt or the voice that sometimes we hear in our head? Does that still affect you now that you're a CEO?
It does. Nope, I still have imposter syndrome. So again, I guess that's the sad news for everyone. Even when you get to a CEO, and don't get me wrong, I feel damn good. I am an expert in like 20 topics and I will rock that out in any way. So I feel very confident, like I am confident. But think about what I do, like with cutting edge technology. I'm not the expert on the latest crypto blockchain XYZ, right? So there's no way, like sometimes I walk into a super technical room and, you're with these, let's say a bunch of data scientists and incredible people, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm not sure I'm even following what they're talking about. So even for myself, I'm not an expert in everything. So there's places where I walk in and again, I'm just curious. So sometimes I feel like, am I supposed to be in this room with all these like brilliance, but, I know I do feel the one good thing I will tell you as hope for all your listeners, as you, grow and experience and things is that you do get a lot more confidence in the areas of your expertise. Like I will walk in any boardroom or anything and like feel I know what I know, right?
What I feel too. Yeah. But no, I think, and just to round it out, I think what is so beautiful on how, in your honesty, is that the reality is you're a rock star. Like I've heard you speak, but doesn't matter. We will all, as people, have moments, and it's not a gender thing. It could be anybody where we walk in a room and feel like, am I supposed to be here? But I think you said that you hit the nail on the head. You are endlessly curious. And so that curiosity, I think, is what you sort of at a core, if you're feeling that and listening to that and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get over imposter syndrome. The reality is you're going to become so confident in your space, and that the honesty of the reality of life is we're all going to go through that. I had it when I was pregnant because my doctor was wearing Manolo Blahniks and my legs were the size of sausages that I wish I could have gotten in those shoes. And I was like, I don't want to be in this room with you, doctor. So that's the reality of life. And I will leave the podcast there. So very, very grateful. And thank you, Chandra, for being on the podcast today. And thank you for the listeners for listening in and tuning in, and look forward to the next session we have in about a week. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Loved what you've heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. It would mean the world to us if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and achieve even greater things. Thank you.